I was born with a tough fate. A high monk once predicted that unless the king of hell himself came to claim me, I would inevitably become a scourge upon the world. My father gritted his teeth and, in a decisive move, sent me to join the army in my brother's place, a solitary city that had held out for 3 years. I conquered it in just 2 months. Returning in triumph to face the emperor, he asked me what reward I desired. I raised my hand and pointed directly at the cold-faced, intimidating regent, him, as my first husband. Then I pointed at the pilously elegant Prince Fu, him, as my second husband. His gaze shifted, landing on the young General Shubujo. You can be my third." Before I could finish, father rushed over and desperately covered my mouth. "Little ancestor, having a tough fate doesn't mean you should tempt it like this." The first thing my father did upon returning to the capital was to wash his neck clean and enter the palace to plead guilty. He claimed he hadn't kept a close enough watch on me, allowing me to act recklessly by knocking out my brother and taking his place to lead the troops into battle. That old fox, it was clearly him who gave the nod of approval back then. We had agreed that if we won and returned, we would confess everything and seek leniency. The story must be told from the beginning. On the day my brother received the imperial decree to campaign against the Tartars, he was still eagerly preparing for battle. Who would have thought that on the eve of his departure, some scoundrel struck him from behind with a heavy blow, causing him to forget all his martial skills and shattering his courage? He absolutely refused to go to war, weeping and wailing that he would rather hang himself at home with a white silk cord, so that at least someone would be there to collect his body. If he were to go to the battlefield, I'm afraid he wouldn't even leave a whole corpse behind. My father sighed anxiously. My mother went to Diju Temple overnight to fetch blessed water and forced him to drink it. As a result, he had diarrhea all night and became even weaker. No choice. My father had to come to me to discuss. "How about, you go in your brother's place? We are fraternal twins. Our appearances are already 80 to 90% similar, and our habits since childhood are pretty much the same. The only difference is, I have a tough fate." When I was little, a senior monk once predicted that I was exceptionally resilient, and that was no lie. At the age of 3, I crawled through a dog hole to go out and play, fell into a lake, and didn't surface for quite a while. When I was fished out, I vomited a puddle of water, stood up, and dragged my wailing mother home for dinner. At 4, I was a troublemaker. I snatched a bone from a stray dog and was chased by a pack of dogs biting my butt. I swung my fists and beat them until they ran off howling. Then went home covered in blood, scaring my mother half to death. But within a month, I was back to being lively and energetic. Later, my mother strictly forbade me from doing reckless things. But when I was 8 years old, I still pulled off a big one. I disguised myself as my brother and tricked the classmates who bullied him into jumping off the roof together. They all ended up with broken arms and legs, while I dusted myself off and went home for dinner. Ever since then, the nickname Little Demon King spread far and wide. My mother, fearing that I might one day bring about my own demise, would anxiously seek out protective talismans for me every year. But who could have imagined that in the end, it would be my own father who pushed me into the pit of disaster? The moment I heard I could take my brother's place on the battlefield, my blood boiled with excitement. To be honest, after all these years in the capital, I've long grown tired of it. Fearing my mother would stop me, I stole my brother's armor and sword that very night and headed straight for the border. On the battlefield, blades and arrows are blind, yet the rain of arrows seemed to have eyes. Not a single one of the countless shafts struck me. I effortlessly led the troops to drive back the enemy, and my subordinates praised me for my bravery and skill. A lone warrior with unmatched courage. After 2 months of frolicking on the frontier, I grew tired of it. Suddenly, I began to miss the lotus seed soup my mother used to stew. So, after a night of eating and drinking my fill, I grabbed my sword and sneaked into the enemy camp. After all, I had nothing better to do. That enemy general is extremely afraid of death. For the past 3 years, we couldn't capture him because he had prepared several body doubles. Every time we thought we had killed the real one, he would reappear the next day. I strolled around to digest my food, sneaking into 5 tents in a row and casually beheading 5 generals, whether they were real or fake. I'd rather kill by mistake than let any of them go. Just as I was about to leave, a sudden sharp pain gripped my stomach. I hurriedly stumbled into the outhouse, only to find someone already squatting inside. I casually cut off his head and took his spot. By the time I strolled back to camp at dawn, 6 heads were dangling from my horse. Our scouts have reported that the enemy general is indeed dead. He died in a most undignified manner, having his head taken off in a latrine. The city gates were immediately thrown open, and the other side took the initiative to sue for peace. I made a modest demand, asking for only 5 cities. On the way, I received the peace negotiation documents sent by the envoy. The emperor only dared to demand 3 cities. I curled my lips. If he doesn't want the extra 2 cities, he might as well give them to me. At worst, I'll occupy a city and declare myself king. Today, I returned to the capital, but my father wasn't home. Mother said he went to the palace to plead guilty. My brother's martial arts skills still haven't returned, and he goes to the training ground every day to get beaten up, coming back bruised and battered each time. Not long after, Eunuchan came to deliver the imperial decree, summoning me to the palace to see the emperor. My mother's face turned pale. Is the emperor going to confiscate our family's property? Brother's eyes reddened. It's all my fault. If I hadn't lost my martial skills, Qinghuan wouldn't have had to go to the battlefield in my place. Eunuchan chuckled. General Shen, you worry too much. The emperor was merely praising the second young lady, saying the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I followed him into the palace. In the grand hall, the emperor smiled and asked me, Shen Qinghuan, you have rendered meritorious service in this battle. What reward would you like? I blinked. Your Majesty, you're not angry with me anymore, the emperor said loudly. The Zhenan general's family is full of heroes, and even his daughter is brave and skilled in battle. Why should I be angry? At that moment, Marquis Fu, my father's old rival, suddenly stepped forward. Your Majesty, the Zhenan general's actions are truly deceiving the sovereign. How can they be lightly forgiven? My father didn't even lift an eyelid, then have my daughter executed. Next time the Tartars come, you can go. I'm old. Junyi has lost his memory, and Marquis Fu is in his prime. You go ahead. Marquis Fu's face turned pale. If everyone were like your family, wouldn't that disrupt the law and order? I smiled and chimed in. The emperor hasn't even spoken yet, and Marquis Fu's little mouth is already running off like diarrhea. Did you eat too many beans this morning? A faint, suppressed chuckle drifted from above, and the emperor also raised his hand to cover his mouth with a light cough. Enough. The emperor gestured with a downward motion of his hand. Merits and faults cancel each other out. Shen Qinghuan, this time you have captured 2 additional cities, which pleases me greatly. Whatever reward you desire, speak it freely. My eyes lit up. Really, anything at all. My father beside me frantically signaled with his eyes, lowering his voice. Don't be too greedy. Don't dare ask for everything. I nodded at him. Father, I know what I'm doing. Don't worry. Just as he let out half a sigh of relief, I turned to the emperor. My voice loud and clear. Since your Majesty has said so, I dare to speak up. My mother is always worried that I won't be able to marry, so I would like to ask your Majesty for a marriage arrangement. My father, didn't you say you're not getting married for now? That's right. But I didn't say I wouldn't marry. The emperor raised an eyebrow with great interest. Oh, who is it that you've taken a liking to? I shall grant you the marriage. I immediately pointed excitedly at the regent known as the Jade-Faced Night Demon. I want him as my first wife. Then she turned to the stunningly handsome Prince Fu. He'll be the second wife, finally. Her gaze fell upon the young General Xu Bujiu. You be my three. Before he could finish, my father clamped a hand over his mouth. Little ancestor, even if you're tough, you can't go about this way. Marquis Fu exploded on the spot. You scoundrel, how dare you covet my son? I broke free from my father's grasp and gave him a smile. If the Marquis says one more word, I might just make him the third concubine. Marquis Fu was so furious his eyes bulged. And he nearly toppled over. The three of them looked at me with varying expressions. The regent Prince Chi Nandu's gaze was deep and inscrutable. You want me to be the senior wife? My father was sweating profusely. No, no, my daughter is being foolish. I looked sincerely at him. If you prefer being the junior wife, that's fine too. But since you're the eldest and have the most capability to manage things, they'll only respect you if you're the senior wife, in truth. From the moment I entered the hall, I had my eyes on these three golden flowers, one more handsome than the last, like celestial beings stepping out of illustrated books. I don't have many flaws, I just love collecting beautiful things. Ugly ones aren't even worth my attention. The Marquis's son spoke in a gentle tone, yet with a sense of detachment. Miss Shen, marriage is a matter of parental command and matchmaker's words. I grinned at Marquis Fu. What's parental command compared to the Emperor's golden decree? Isn't that right, your lordship? He was immediately rendered speechless. As for the young General Xu Bujiu, he stared at me in shock from the moment I entered the hall. The reason was simple. During my time pretending to be my brother, not only did I share meals and lodgings with him, but I even handed him clothes while he changed his bandages after being injured. Xu Bujiu has a great physique and always hides delicious treats for me. Such a thoughtful person deserves a title. It would be unjust not to give him one. At this moment, his fingertips trembled slightly, and his voice tightened. You're not Junyi. I curved my lips into a sincere smile. I never said I was. His ears turned red instantly, and he couldn't speak coherently. The court was deathly silent. The emperor opened his mouth, but it took him a long time to squeeze out a sound. Matrimonial matters should be based on mutual consent. Forcing a relationship doesn't lead to happiness, I said with a straight face. You won't know if the melon is sweet until you pick it and taste it. When the emperor selects concubines, does he ask each one if they're willing to be a concubine? My father couldn't stop me and clutched his chest, pretending to faint. The emperor's temple throbbed with a blue vein. After a moment of silence, he gritted his teeth and said, "As long as the regent and the others agree, I will." I immediately chimed in, "If they don't agree, I'll return the 2 extra cities we asked for." The emperor was speechless. After the court session ended, the imperial edict ultimately did not dare to be issued immediately. No other reason. Offending 3 powerful ministers at once, not to mention those families might collectively fall ill and pass away at the palace gates, but in the rear palace. Those ladies with connections to those 3 families would likely overturn the imperial study. In the end, the emperor relented and gave me 3 months. If I can persuade them to agree, I can marry all 3. If not, he will choose another husband for me. I muttered discontentedly. And you call yourself the emperor, yet you don't even have the courage for this. My father dragged me to the corner. Even the emperor relies on the regent to govern. And you go and stir up trouble right from the start. Do you really think the king of hell wouldn't dare to take you? I puffed out my chest and tilted my head. Isn't that so? The eminent monk said it himself. He stomped his foot in anger. If you're so capable, why don't you just become the emperor yourself? Me. Then I'm really going. Don't you dare cry. My father immediately knelt down facing the palace. My daughter speaks recklessly. I have failed in teaching her properly. I pulled him up. Enough. The emperor can't hear you. My father nervously glanced around. What if there are spies? When it comes to being cowardly and fearing death, my father truly has no equal. Not long after leaving the palace gate, I ran into Marquis Fu dragging Fu Xiao along as he hurriedly walked out. Hurry up, stay away from that demon king. I swiftly moved to block their path, my gaze fixed intently on Fu Xiao. Lord Fu, do you like daggers? His eyebrows lifted slightly, and his handsome appearance made my throat tighten. What if I like it, and what if I don't? I pulled out a short dagger adorned with gemstones and handed it over. For you. I took it from the enemy general's bedside. Marquis Fu's face turned pale. Don't take it, it must be poisoned. I swiftly drew my dagger. A cold gleam flashing, accidentally, I sliced off a tuft of hair from Marquis Fu's forehead. He froze completely, trembling and not daring to move. I then turned to Fu Xiao with a gentle smile. So, how is it? Sharp, isn't it? Do you like it? Fu Xiao's eyes suddenly lit up as he reached out to take it. Thank you. I seized the opportunity. So, about becoming my second husband. Have you given it serious thought? If I remember correctly, he used to sneak into my father's martial arts training ground to learn martial arts when he was a child. Later, he was caught by Marquis Fu and taken back home, where he was severely scolded. Fu Xiao clearly had the talent of a military commander, yet his father forced him down the path of a civil official. Having a father who can't see things clearly really holds a person back. No worries, once Fu Xiao enters my Shen family, I have my own ways to discipline this disobedient father-in-law. I cast a sinister glance at Marquis Fu. He was just about to flee in a panic, but as my gaze swept over him, he stumbled and nearly fell flat on his face. When I returned home, my mother already knew that I had made a huge mess in the court and was kneeling in the ancestral hall, praying for the ancestors' protection. My brother looked at me with a complicated expression. Did all the courage I lost in the past end up growing on you? That regent is most skilled at confiscating property and wiping out entire families. Who in the entire capital doesn't take a detour when they see him? Yet you insist on charging straight toward him. I rested my chin on my hand and took a bite of melon. I just like his face, it's as beautiful as an immortal descending to the mortal realm. Having him at home to look at every day would brighten up the whole house by 3 parts. Father trembled as he interjected. Aren't you afraid that our whole family will end up living with him and one day meet the King of Hell together? I thought it over seriously and nodded. Father makes a good point. In that case, father, mother, and brother, you should move out and live elsewhere. My brother speechless, my father and my mother speechless. Time is tight and the task is heavy, so I headed straight to the regent's mansion early in the morning. As soon as I arrived at the door, Kong Qing, Qi Nandu's personal guard, gave me a thumbs up. Is your prince still not awake? Kong Qing, the prince's morning routine includes bathing first. I rolled my eyes, patted him, and said, "Go, fetch me some snacks." After sending him away, I tiptoed quietly to the backyard. The water gurgled, and mist swirled. Before I could get a clear look, a slightly cold voice came from inside. "Get out." I quickly slipped in. Chinanda leaned half against the bathtub, wet hair clinging to his neck, and when he looked up, he was slightly taken aback. "Why is it you?" I boldly sized him up from head to toe, nodding. Your figure is even better than when you were a child." His face darkened. "Seen enough." "Not yet." I leaned in closer. "Someone this beautiful, I could look at you for a lifetime and it still wouldn't be enough." Chinanda gritted his teeth. "Shen Qinghuan, have you no shame? Oh, you let me see everything before, and now you're unwilling." He paused. "When did I ever let you see anything?" "March of the Zhaonian era, Chunhua Tower." I kindly reminded him. Chinanda was stunned, his eyes darkening. It seems he remembered, at the age of 6. I sneaked out wearing my brother's clothes to buy candy, but I was too conspicuous and got kidnapped by a trafficker. In the same carriage sat a handsome blind boy, as pretty as a jade doll. Later, We were sold into a brothel. Since I was young, I was given to the madam as a bonus. He was blind and trusted no one but me. Feeding, changing clothes, wiping down, and bathing, everything had to be done by me. For a full half-month, I tied his hair up, and he taught me to read. Until the day the soldiers broke down the door, I still asked him, "Big brother, if I were a girl and saw you naked, would you marry me?" He laughed, "Isn't Aju a boy? But if that day really comes, I'll marry you." Yet later, when my family took me away and I went back to look for him, he was already nowhere to be found. The bathhouse was silent, with steam gently rising. Chinanda looked up, water droplets sliding down his throat. "Is it you?" I leaned over the edge of the tub, smiling at him. "It's me. So now you don't have to marry me. I'll marry you instead." He held back again and again. "You go out first." I turned around. "Then I'll turn my back. Is that okay?" Seeing that I was deliberately pretending not to understand, Chinanda closed his eyes and finally steeled himself to stand up. The water flowed with a splash. I couldn't hold back and spoke up again. "Can you reach your back? Do you want me to help you?" "Shut up, Aju. I'm not called Aju. My name is Qinghuan. Shun Qinghuan." As soon as he finished tying his sash, I turned around and shamelessly said, "I'm hungry. I want to eat breakfast." "Didn't you eat at home? I want to be fed by Big Brother." During those 2 weeks at Chunhua Tower, on the surface I was serving him, but in reality, I was also craving it intensely. If caught stealing pastries by the madam, a beating was inevitable. He would always quietly save half a piece, fumbling to bring it to my lips. At that moment, Kong Qing came in carrying breakfast, and upon seeing me in the room, her hands trembled in shock. "Miss Shen, how did you?" "Just passing by." I remained expressionless. Then I grabbed Chinanda's sleeve and acted spoiled. "Feed me." Chinanda lowered his gaze to look at me. "Aren't you afraid of me?" "Afraid of what?" "You can't kill me. The eminent monk said I have a tough fate." He suddenly grabbed my wrist, pulling me close. His voice lowered. "The eminent monk also said I carry an aura of misfortune, especially harmful to others." Our breaths mingled at close quarters, body heat seeping through the fabric. I took advantage of his speaking to quickly peck his chin. "It's fine." I smiled. "Come and overcome me." He let go of my hand as if shocked by electricity. Taking half a step back, Kong Qing stood there dumbfounded. Chinanda turned to leave. "I have something to attend to. Going to confiscate property." I grabbed his sleeve. "You still need to eat breakfast before you go. Your stomach isn't good." Kong Qing couldn't help but ask, "How do you know the prince has a weak stomach? He is my man." "So of course I know." Kong Qing, Chinanda, unable to shake me off, finally sat down and picked up his chopsticks. I gestured with my chin toward the pastry, signaling him to feed me. He ignored me. Suddenly, I exclaimed, "Ah, that's right. I just noticed the red mole on your lower back. It's even more vivid than when we were kids." Before I could finish speaking, a piece of lotus seed cake was firmly stuffed into my mouth. He withdrew his hand, his face as cold as frost, yet the tips of his ears flushed with a faint red. After finishing breakfast, I followed Chinanda to carry out the confiscation. He probably wanted to scare me away. Today, we were raiding the residence of Minister Ju, who had embezzled military funds. The entire courtyard of people were dragged out, their cries and curses shaking the heavens. A few bold ones pointed at Chinanda, spitting out curses. "Heartless lackey, living king of hell. May you die a miserable death." The foul language grew increasingly venomous with each word. The air around Chinanda turned icy cold as he glanced at me. "Did you hear that? By staying by my side, aren't you afraid of being cursed as a cruel official alongside me, leaving a stench for 100 years? His voice was low and cold. "My hands have never been stained with clean blood." I didn't make a sound, only reached out to draw the long sword from Kong Qing's waist. A flash of cold light. The one who had cursed the loudest suddenly fell silent. a piece of his tongue dropping to the ground, blood splattered onto my cuff. Yet I only lifted my gaze to the deathly silence that filled the courtyard, embezzling military funds, causing border soldiers to starve and freeze. How many died of hunger or cold before even reaching the front lines? The prince's confiscation was entirely justified. If you truly feel wronged, I flicked the blade and chuckled softly. Then go to the underworld and file a complaint with King Yama. Just say that the memorial was presented to the emperor by me, Shen Qinghuan. Let him come and take me personally. This case was something I uncovered by following the clues in my spare time. I pulled out a string of corrupt officials, and in the end, I dragged out this big one. The Zhu family no longer dared to curse Qi Nandu, instead turning their insults toward me. Qi Nandu suddenly raised his hand. Gag them. Kong Qing immediately led his men forward. I sheathed my sword, took out a handkerchief, and pulled his hand over, carefully wiping his fingertips. Look. Your hands are perfectly clean. The heads I've taken on the battlefield far outnumber yours. His fingers trembled slightly, but he did not pull them back. For 3 days straight, I followed Qi Nandu in confiscating properties. The military pay scandal has far-reaching implications, and my father was heavily criticized at court, with everyone saying he failed to teach his daughter properly, raising a cold-blooded demon when he returned from court. His hands were still trembling as he held a bowl, and he pleaded with a pained expression, "My dear, please don't get involved in that matter anymore." I shoveled rice into my mouth. Why, I was the one who submitted the memorial. Can't I go see what those people look like? My father sighed. That's the regent's responsibility. I put down my chopsticks, but the names of the people he copied were all written by me, stroke by stroke. Father choked. Mother nodded beside him. Qinghuan makes a good point. A person who is upright need not fear a crooked shadow. But my brother suddenly interjected, "Speaking of which, the regent actually didn't drive you away." I stroked my chin and chuckled. Not only did I not drive him away, now I can come and go freely in the prince's mansion. Yesterday, I even pestered him, insisting on tying his hair for him, although at Chunhua Tower, it was mostly me haphazardly combing his hair. 8 out of 10 times he would leave it loose. Because I truly didn't know how. But today, I have other matters to attend to. This morning, Marquis Fu scolded my father again in court, so I need to go check on my second wife and give that disobedient father-in-law a little lesson. After finishing my meal, I slipped out the door. My father called from behind, "Where are you going again?" "Just going for a stroll." After walking a block, I had already climbed over the back wall of the Shurani Marquis's residence. Who would have thought that as soon as I landed, I crashed right into someone? Oh no, could it be that I crushed them to death? I hurriedly got up and took a closer look. The one pinned underneath was actually Fu Xiao. He sat up, supporting his waist, his brow slightly furrowed. "Why is it you?" I blurted out at the same time. "Why is it you?" He tried to stand up by pushing off the ground, but his body swayed unsteadily. "Did you strain your back?" I reached out to support him. "It's nothing." He turned his face away. "That would be a great hindrance," I said with a serious expression. "What if you end up disabled?" "I won't marry a disabled second wife." As I spoke, I reached out to touch his lower back, but as soon as my fingertips made contact, he gasped sharply, "Don't touch. Men and women should not have physical contact." I paused in my movements, suddenly lifting the back of his shirt. Layer upon layer of whip marks covered his back, some still oozing with traces of blood. "Who did this?" My voice grew heavy. He suddenly stepped back, straightening his collar. "No one. Miss Shen, please leave. Your father, none of your business." "How is it none of my business?" I took a step closer. "You lost to me long ago. You're mine." Fu Xiao turned his head away, his voice strained. "Children's words carry no harm, Miss Shen. You needn't take it seriously." I raised my hand and lifted his chin, forcing him to look at me. "Is that so, then?" For that time you stole a kiss from me back then, should I kiss you back? His face flushed bright red instantly, his eyes avoiding mine. When I was 7, Fu Xiao would often climb over the wall to secretly learn martial arts at my family's training ground. My father knew, but he never drove him away. Instead, he gave him earnest guidance. At that time, I learned faster than my brother, and Fu Xiao refused to admit defeat. We competed fiercely every day, until one contest. We agreed that the loser would serve the winner like a slave. I won. He stood before me, his cheeks flushed, yet he didn't deny it. From now on, I am yours, at your command. I teased him with a grin. Then, how about being my little wife? His eyelashes fluttered, and he suddenly leaned in, planting a quick peck on my cheek. Back then, Fu Xiao was vivid and full of life, but later, he was captured by the Marquis and locked up in the estate. After that, even if we happened to meet, he would always lower his eyes and hurriedly avoid me. Later, my father also grew angry, cursing Marquis Fu for ruining a promising talent, and the two families became increasingly at odds. As a result, we saw each other even less. Fu Xiao turned his head aside, his voice tense. Miss Shen, you are a woman. How can you be so? When you kissed me back then, why didn't you think about me being a woman? I retorted. He was left speechless. I pulled him towards the courtyard. Where's your room? Afraid of being seen, he hurriedly led me inside. I found the medicine bottle. Lie down. Let me apply the medicine. He remained stiff and unmoving. Don't force me to act. I raised an eyebrow. My martial skills are far superior to yours now. Fu Xiao still refused, so I directly loosened his belt, wrapped his wrist with my waistband, and pushed him onto the bed. He was both embarrassed and angry. Shen Qinghuan, do you even know? I covered his mouth. If I didn't know, how could I dare to marry you? His lips trembled softly beneath my palm, like freshly steamed milk pudding. When I turned him over and applied the ointment to his wounds, he tensed up, pain evident in his back. My hand trembled as well. Why did your father beat you? It's none of your business. I grip his chin, forcing him to turn his face. Say that again. After a long silence, he finally speaks in a low voice. He wouldn't let me resign and join the military camp. I am stunned. Isn't Fu Xiao already the Grand Astrologer? You want to resign from your post? He did not answer. Is it really for this reason that he beat you like this? The anger flared up instantly. What kind of father is this? After applying the medicine, I untied the restraints on his wrists. Fu Xiao silently put on his clothes, returning to that distant demeanor. Miss Shen, please leave. What? Are you going back on your word again? My father and your father, are political rivals. How could we possibly? I interrupted him. If I persuade your father to allow you to resign from your official post, would you be willing? His eyes suddenly lit up, and he blurted out, I am willing. Willing to what? Willing to marry me, or willing to? I smiled. I'm just asking if you're willing to go to the military camp and start as a deputy general. His ears turned red, and he turned his face away, no longer speaking. Actually, when I first met these 3 golden flowers, it was mostly out of attraction to their looks. Now, reaching this point, I can't say I haven't regretted it. The rumors had already started, and the whole city was betting that I wouldn't win any. In a fit of anger, I put all my savings on winning all of them. If I lose, I'll really have to live on the breeze from the northwest for the rest of my life. How do I know you won't go back on your word again? I stared at him. Fu Xiao was silent for a moment, then suddenly raised his hand to the sky. Heaven above, if Miss Shen can persuade my father to allow me to join the military camp, I, Fu Xiao, am willing to marry into the Shen family, and for this lifetime, I will obey without question and never go back on my word. I smiled and pressed down his hand. All right, wait for it. Wait for me to come and marry you. After returning, I asked my father, what are Marquis Fu's weaknesses? My father sneered, there are plenty. He's afraid of death. scared of ghosts, snakes, and even dogs. Why do you ask? Nothing much, just asking around. That night, I caught a garter snake and tossed it into his bedroom. Lord Fu was so frightened that he ran around the courtyard in his undergarments, even losing one of his shoes. After watching enough of the commotion, I went back to bed feeling quite satisfied. This counts as interest. Who told him to hit my second wife? The next day, I took a big black dog and ran into him at the entrance of the alley. As soon as I let go of the leash, the dog charged straight at him, forcing him into a dead end. Oh, what a coincidence. Marquis Fu. I leaned out with a beaming smile. He trembled against the wall, exclaiming, "Little devil, get that dog away. I'm afraid of dogs too." I shrugged. I wouldn't dare. After saying that, he hummed a tune and left. I heard that he later tried to escape by climbing over the wall but got stuck on top, unable to go up or down, and was laughed at by the onlookers for half a day. In the following days, I took turns going into action. In the dead of night, I pretended to be a ghostly figure and placed paper dolls by the bedside, causing chaos in the Marquis's mansion. The Marquis Fu invited 3 batches of Taoist priests to perform rituals, and his dark circles grew heavier day by day. Fu Xiao quietly approached me and said, "Could we slow down? My father is almost scared to the point of a heart condition." I replied seriously, "He is my father-in-law, and I know my limits." He was speechless. Finally, one night, when Marquis Fu went to the toilet, I dropped a frog over the wall, and he caught me red-handed. He was so angry his mustache nearly stood on end. And he stormed to my house that very night to demand an explanation. My father sat calmly in the hall, yawning. "My daughter is gentle and quiet, never causing trouble. Marquis, do not slander her with false accusations." Marquis Fu pointed at me, trembling. "Do you even believe that yourself, Shen Dachui? Your daughter is a notorious little devil in the capital." My mother slammed the table. "If you slander my daughter again, do you believe I'll have my husband beat you up?" Marquis Fu shrank his neck. A family of brute force. Fu Xiao, following behind, tried to mediate. "Father, perhaps you're mistaken. Qinghuan wouldn't." "What did you call her?" "Qinghuan." Lord Fu turned his head abruptly. "When did you two become so close?" I gave my brother a meaningful look. The door slammed shut with a loud clang. Marquis Fu's face turned pale. What are you going to do?" I placed my sword on the table. "Marquis Fu, if you want me to stop, I have one condition." "I want Fu Xiao." "You're dreaming." He stiffened his neck. "I've worked so hard to raise my son. How could I let you taint him? Am I not good-looking? Even if he's good-looking, it's not allowed." My father, standing beside me, winked and mouthed the question, "What kind of act is this?" I smiled and said, "All right. I can give up on Fu Xiao, but he said he's willing to marry me. The Marquis also knows that the Emperor has spoken. As long as Fu Xiao is willing, he will grant the marriage." Marquis Fu was greatly shocked, turning to glare at his son. "You're willing? Do you know what kind of temperament she has? She's a little devil who can shake the yolk out of an egg just by walking through a chicken coop." Fu Xiao lowered his gaze, his voice resolute. "Father, I am fond of Qinghuan. Are you going to cut off the Fu family line?" Marquis Fu beat his chest and stamped his feet in despair. "If she ever decides to do us in, there'd be nowhere to seek justice." I said with a sincere expression, "Your lordship exaggerates. How would I dare to kill anyone? At most, I'd just cripple you and have you cared for at home." He shuddered in fear. "What will it take for you to spare my son? You'll agree to anything." He nodded frantically. "Very well," I said slowly. "Grant his resignation." Lord Fu was taken aback for a moment before he caught on. "You all ganged up to deceive me." "Not exactly a deception." I smiled. "There are 2 paths. Either I ask the Emperor to bestow a marriage, or you allow him to resign from his official post and join the military camp." Only then did my father realize. "Qinghuan, Why are you so insistent on having the Fu heir resign from his post? Marquis Fu was so angry he was huffing and puffing. Shen Dachui, do you really not know? Your daughter has lured my son, intending to send him to the military camp to risk his life. I disagree. I'd rather die than agree. Why must you stop him? I stared at Marquis Fu. Fu Xiao is a born military genius. Can't you see? He's been suppressed by you all these years. His spirit has been worn down. Do you really think he's happy? While in the military camp, I had seen several scrolls of battle formation diagrams, which were absolutely brilliant. One more question revealed it was from Fu Xiao's hand. With such talent, why should he be confined to the narrow confines of the capital? Marquis Fu's shoulders slumped, his voice suddenly hoarse. I just know all too well. He tried to sneak off to the border several times, and each time I beat him so badly he couldn't get out of bed. I was afraid. He wiped his face with his hand. His elder brother, back then, he was just like him, full of passion, and went to the northern frontier. But in the end, not even his remains were fully recovered. His mother, upon hearing the tragic news, fell ill and never recovered. After giving birth to Xiao, she held my hand and only said one thing: raise him well, let him be happy and healthy. Before she passed away, I only have this one son left. I just want him to be safe and sound. Was I wrong? I stood frozen in place. Fu Xiao knelt down with a thud, his eyes reddening. Father, I won't be like my brother. I'm not going. After saying those words, he seemed as if his soul had been drained, his back slowly bending over. My heart clenched tightly. My father also sighed. Marquis Fu's eyes brimmed with tears. When he was a child, he climbed over the wall to learn martial arts from you. Did you really think I didn't know? The one he admired most was you, Shen Dachui. But he is my only son. I bent down to help Fu Xiao up, then turned to the Marquis. Marquis, do you want a son who lives his whole life like a shadow? Look at him in all these years. Has he ever truly smiled? I pulled out the scroll of the battle formation diagram from my sleeve and unfurled it. All of these were painted by him. Even the Emperor marveled at his talent for strategy and governance. Do you truly intend to clip his wings with your own hands? I knelt down, raising my palms toward the sky. By the heavens above, I, Shen Qinghuan, swear an oath here. If Fu Xiao enters the military camp, I will protect him with my life. Should anything happen to him, I will not live on alone. The hall fell into a long silence. Marquis Fu finally closed his eyes slowly, the tear stains still fresh on his face. It's my fault, Xiao. Before your mother passed, she clearly told me to let you live more freely. He reached out and pressed his hand on Fu Xiao's shoulder, speaking to my father. Brother Shen, I leave him in your hands. Train him in your martial arts field, and when you think he's ready for the battlefield, then let him go. Fu Xiao suddenly looked up, a glimmer of light instantly flashing in his eyes. Fu Xiao followed my brother to the martial arts field, and I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Only then did I remember that there was still the third branch of the family I hadn't attended to. Before I could set off, Xu Bujiu came on his own. He entered the front hall carrying a bundle of thorns on his back and knelt down without a word. Qinghuan, I have come to make amends. Sharing meals and lodging with you in the military camp was my negligence, and it has tarnished your reputation. Today, I have come specifically to ask for your hand in marriage. My eyelids twitched, and before I could even cover his mouth, the entire family gasped in shock. At that moment, a chilling voice came from behind the door. You eat and sleep together with him. Qi Nandu, dressed in dark-colored casual attire, stood by the door at some point, his eyes deep and somber. Wasn't he supposed to be busy? What are you doing here? I quickly moved closer to soothe him. Didn't we also eat and sleep together? I even helped you bathe. There were several more sharp intakes of breath. Qi Nandu's gaze swept over Xu Bujiu, then returned to my face. These days, you've been pacifying one after another. You really can't keep up. I forced a laugh. Exactly. So in the future, please don't argue. I won't be able to handle it. He stared at me, his face turning pale bit by bit. Shen Qinghuan, today you're fond of this one, tomorrow you're fond of that one. Is it because you've staked everything on a gamble, or because, have you ever truly liked anyone? How did you know about the gambling? Kong Qing timidly raised his hand behind the door. Subordinate also placed a small bet. It just so happened that the dealer let it slip. I glared at him. What did you bet on? He shrank his neck. I bet you wouldn't win any. Xu Bujiu suddenly looked up. So Qinghuan, you asked for my hand in marriage in the hall, just to use me as a bet. Coincidentally, at that moment, my brother and Fu Xiao finished practicing martial arts and returned. Fu Xiao sensed the unusual atmosphere as soon as he entered. What's going on? I felt a tingling sensation on my scalp. Young Master Fu, let me explain. Clarify. He quietly glanced at me and suddenly spoke. No need to explain. Qinghuan promised to protect me for a lifetime. If I die, she dies. Wait, that's what it sounds like. But it doesn't seem to mean that. On the battlefield. Xu Bujiu's face turned pale. You actually want to be buried with him, for life and death. Fu Xiao had already walked over to my side and raised his hand. Qinghuan, I hurt my wrist during today's martial arts practice. Can you help me apply the medicine? Qi Nandu spoke coldly. Don't you have your own hands? Fu Xiao lowered his eyes, his tone gentle. Qinghuan. She once helped me apply medicine to my back. Her technique was better. I froze in place, my mouth opening slightly. It's over. This time, it's completely beyond explanation. The three exchanged glances, and Qi Nandu turned and left, while Xu Bujiu also rushed out with reddened eyes. I wanted to go after them. Fu Xiao spoke softly. If Qinghuan is busy, go ahead. My injury won't kill me. It will just hurt more tomorrow. He turned to my brother. Junyi, could you help me with the medicine? My brother was taken aback. I have a heavy hand. Aren't you afraid of pain? Fu Xiao, let's go. After everyone had dispersed, my father let out a long sigh. Daughter, have you completely offended all three of them? My mother shook her head. TSK. Trouble comes from the mouth. I frowned. What should we do then? Father spread his hands. Don't look at me. I only have your mother. I've been loyal all my life. How did I end up with a playboy like you? He turned and suspiciously looked at mother. Wife, Qinghuan, could she be a mix-up? Mother pinched his arm. Nonsense. She looks exactly like Junyi. How could there be a mistake? Both said in unison. Good luck to you. I scratched my head and had no choice but to buy 3 gifts and try to appease each one. First, I went to the regent's residence, but Kong Qing blocked the door, saying, the prince is interrogating a criminal. What criminal is there to interrogate at this late hour? Kong Qing gave me a sidelong glance. Shouldn't you be the one to ask? I sneaked into the dungeon. Qi Nandu had just put down the torture tools, his hands stained with blood. Let me help you wipe it off. I leaned in closer. He turned aside to avoid me. No need to trouble yourself. I grabbed his wrist and carefully wiped away the bloodstains. That bet wasn't started by me. I always waited for you to recognize me, but you never truly looked at me. You promised you would always remember me. Yet every time you attended court, you were too busy intimidating my father. I wanted to acknowledge you, to tell you I was a Jew, but you wouldn't even let me through the gates of the prince's mansion. If I hadn't spoken up that day in the palace, would you have spared me a glance? I wiped his fingers clean and set the handkerchief aside. If you're still angry, I'll just leave. At worst, I'll lose the entire bet. Just as I turned to go, he grabbed my arm. You're the one who provoked me, and now you're the one who wants to leave. Qi Nandu's voice was hoarse. Shen Qinghuan, what do you take me for? I turned back with a smile. As my first wife. He closed his eyes. Can it just be me? After a pause, he added, never mind. Then in the future, may I discipline them? My eyes lit up. Of course you can. You're the eldest. I took out the half-piece of jade pendant from my bosom and placed it in his palm. The jade was engraved with my name and his, split in two. They don't have it. I looked up at him. Only you have it. Chi Nandu's fingertips traced the patterns on the jade, his expression finally softening a little. Shen Qinghuan, his voice was very low. I have no father or mother. I am all alone. If you betray me, I took his hand. From now on, you'll have a father and mother, a brother, and me and Fu Xiao and the others. Seeing that the sky was still dark, I slipped away to the Shurani Marquis Manor again. Fu Xiao wasn't in his room. After searching around without finding any trace of him, I had no choice but to knock on Marquis Fu's door. As soon as he opened the door and saw it was me, he jumped back in fright. Little troublemaker. Qinghuan, what are you doing here in the middle of the night? Are you planning to play ghost again? Is my life not a life? What has my son done to offend you this time? Can't you go find him instead? I came to ask you precisely because I couldn't find him. Marquis Fu narrowed his eyes and suddenly chuckled. What? Did you make my son angry? Do you know where he usually goes when he's angry? I won't tell. I just won't tell you. I pretended to reach into my sleeve. On the way here, I happened to catch a little flower snake. South courtyard. He's in the south courtyard. Marquis Fu shouted with his eyes closed. I grinned. Just kidding, Tilda. Marquis Fu was speechless. In the southern courtyard under the moonlight, Fu Xiao was practicing his swordplay. I quietly approached, and as he turned his sword, it nearly grazed me, startling him so much that he immediately dropped the weapon. Shen Qinghuan, do you have any idea how close I came to hurting you? I knew you wouldn't. I picked up the sword and handed it back to him. What have you come for? To beg for your forgiveness. He turned his back. Why beg me? What fault have you? The fault is mine. I shouldn't have hoped, shouldn't have dreamed that your heart and eyes were filled with me. But I forgot. Your heart can be split into 3 parts. And all of them are false. It's true. I urgently grabbed his sleeve. I swear. He suddenly turned around and covered my mouth. Don't make rash vows. I seized the opportunity to lean closer. Don't be angry. I mean it. I truly want to marry you. After all, you lost the bet back then and said if you broke your promise, you'd turn into an ugly monster. I raised my hand and gently touched his cheek, smiling as I said, You're so beautiful. How could I bear to? Seeing his expression soften, I took out 2 small dolls from my embrace and held them up before his eyes. Our names were finely carved on the wooden dolls. One read Xiao. The other Huan. Here, one is for you, and one is for me. They have none. Fu Xiao took the doll, his fingertips tracing over the carved marks. I stood on tiptoe and quickly kissed him on the lips. You're right. In death we shall share the same grave. His eyes darkened abruptly, and his Adam's apple bobbed slightly. Qinghuan. By the time I left the Marquis's residence, the sky was already turning pale with the first light of dawn. I had a bowl of wontons at a roadside stall. Then ordered another to go, carrying it with me to the general's mansion. The gatekeeper's servant said with a bitter face, The young general is running away from home. He says he's going back to the border to guard the city. I raised an eyebrow. The war is over. What city is there to guard? Pushing the door open and entering the room, Shu Bujio was holding a bundle. His eyes red. He said hoarsely, Get out of the way. I block the doorway. I won't let you. You said you'd take responsibility for me, but now you're trying to run away. My reputation is already ruined. How am I supposed to face people from now on? Maybe I should just find a white silk cord and hang myself right at the gate of your estate. Shu Bujio grew anxious. That's not what I meant. Didn't they also? With you, they are all willing to take responsibility. I interrupted him. Only you refuse. A dignified young general, yet a man who goes back on his word. His eyelashes trembled slightly. Didn't you just want to win the bet with us? When did I ever say it was just a game? I took a step forward. If that were truly the case, why would I still come looking for you? Then, Why don't you ask the emperor to arrange the marriage? Shu Bujio's voice grew softer. I waited at home for many days. I was taken aback. He was waiting for me. My heart suddenly softened, and I reached out to pull him into my arms. How could I not want to? I'll go to the palace right now to seek the decree. Shu Bujio wiped the corner of his eye. Then I won't leave. Before leaving, I stuffed that bowl of wontons and a pair of jade bracelets into his hands. The bracelets are hidden weapons. Press here to shoot silver needles, for self-defense. After a pause, he added, they don't have it. He cherished it like a treasure, clutching the jade bracelet tightly to his chest. I immediately rushed to the palace to seek an imperial decree. The emperor nearly dropped his teacup upon hearing this. They all agreed. I straightened my back. Naturally, you didn't coerce or force them, if your majesty doubts it. You can summon them to inquire. He truly summoned Marquis Fu. The marquis looked utterly resigned, letting out a long sigh. Children grow up and no longer listen to their fathers. The emperor remained silent for a while, his eyes faintly showing admiration. I yield, the imperial decree in hand. I happily carried it out of the palace and promptly used the silver I had won from a gambling game to purchase a grand 5-courtyard mansion in the most bustling alley of the capital. Extra story. On the day of the wedding, none of the 3 grooms were willing to enter through the back door. Before dawn, Chinandu dispatched troops to surround the mansion, claiming it was for security, but in reality, he had taken control of the main entrance. Fu Xiao, overnight, invited the most renowned wedding band in the city, and their pipes and drums woke up half the street early in the morning. Shu Bujio was even more straightforward, directly bringing the dowry chest to the entrance of my courtyard. Claiming that his dowry was abundant and deserved priority, I sat in the room wearing my wedding dress, listening to the commotion outside that was causing chaos. My mother peeked out, then pulled back, exclaiming, well, I've seen people fighting over brides, but this is the first time I've seen someone rushing to marry. In the end, it was my father who went out carrying a bronze gong, which he struck with a loud clang. Draw lots. The one who draws one goes first, followed by 2 and 3. Anyone who causes trouble will sleep in the stable tonight. Wedding night. This time, they didn't argue. Chinandu calmly said, in the order of entry. Fu Xiao smiled, it should be. Shu Bujio nodded, all right, but when I emerged after bathing and changing, I found the 3 of them sitting neatly on the edge of the bed, each occupying a corner. None of them had left. I stood there in shock. How do we sleep? Chinandu patted the empty space in the middle. Come over. Fu Xiao had already unfolded another luxurious quilt. It gets cold at night. Better to have an extra layer. Shu Bujio jumped up and pulled me. Let me help you warm up the bed. Finally, in the end, we played mahjong until midnight. Whoever lost a round had to sleep on the outer room couch for 15 minutes. As dawn approached, I won all the copper coins from the 3 of them and fell into a deep sleep wrapped in 3 wedding quilts. When border conflicts flared up again, I was appointed as the general of Nanyang, leading Fu Xiao and Shu Bujio in pursuit of a band of roving Tartar cavalry. The continuous days of horseback riding left me somewhat fatigued, and one morning, I found myself vomiting outside the tent. Fu Xiao was the first to notice something was amiss. Shu Bujio, call the military physician. Quickly. Shu Bujio was wiping his long spear when he heard the news, causing the tip of the spear to tremble. Qinghuan is injured. After the military doctor arrived, he paused for a moment with his fingers on the pulse. Congratulations, General Shin, it's a pregnancy pulse. The tent fell silent in an instant. I hadn't even recovered from my shock when Shu Bujio picked me up in one swift motion and gently placed me on the bed. From today onwards, you are not allowed to ride a horse, touch any weapons, or leave the camp. Fu Xiao, meanwhile, spread out paper and ground ink. Quickly writing a secret letter to be sent to the capital by a falcon, The recipient of the letter was Chi Nandu. The content consists of only one line: "Hurry, Qinghuan is pregnant, and we fear we cannot control her." After that, the war intensified. The originally planned 6-month sweep was forced into 3 months by the two of them. Fu Xiao deployed his troops with ruthless decisiveness, specifically targeting the enemy's provisions and supplies. Forcing their main force into a hasty decisive battle, Xu Bujiu led light cavalry on day and night raids, breaking through 3 camps in 7 days. By the time the battle report returned, he had already captured the enemy leader alive from his horse. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. In the year I came of age, I buried my foster mother and entered the imperial palace. I became a princess. They say I was cut from the belly of the late empress before she set herself on fire. I look exactly like the late empress. How could I not? 15 years of starving at every meal and being force-fed medicine every day made it so. Fortunately, hard work pays off. Finally, I've managed to sneak into this imperial palace. Jinshu is a ruthless woman, ever since I can remember. She has only allowed me to eat 3 bites of vegetables and 1 bite of rice at every meal. To avoid going hungry, I could swallow a whole bowl of rice in 1 gulp. Jinshu saw it, but she didn't hit me or scold me. She just made me kneel in front of that bare memorial tablet. When I was young and didn't know any better, I would cry out of grievance. Later, when I understood things better, I didn't need Jinshu to say much. I would count the grains of rice as I ate, not taking a single extra one. Besides having to go hungry, Jinshu would also boil some bitter medicinal decoctions for me to drink. She said these medicines could slow my growth, making even the most experienced imperial physician unable to determine my age. Jinshu initially even considered performing surgery on my face. Fortunately, as I grew older, I began to resemble Empress Wang more and more, which spared me that physical suffering. Once everything was prepared, Jinshu decisively took her own life. So quickly that I didn't even have time to cry. I had just buried her in the ground when someone from the palace arrived. It was an old eunuch with a kind and gentle face. He must have been quite happy to see me, because although his facial expression didn't change at all, his ears were trembling slightly. Jinshu said that people's ears only tremble when they are particularly excited or agitated. The old eunuch said he was Chief Eunuch Wang of the Directorate of Ceremonial. Here to escort me back to the palace, he told me I was the daughter of the late empress, a princess of noble blood. How could I possibly refuse such a wonderful opportunity? I immediately followed him and boarded the gilded sedan chair. The sedan chair was carried all the way from the palace gate to the imperial study. Eunuch Wang said this was an immense favor, as no one had ever enjoyed such an honor before. When you possess something exclusively, it's best to be humble and not get too proud. Eunuch Wang is giving me a hint. I thanked him earnestly and followed him into the imperial study. The emperor's study was older than I had imagined, with no shiny decorations to speak of, making it rather unattractive. The emperor himself, however, was quite handsome, fair-skinned and clean, looking too young to be a father. When he saw me, his expression turned foolish, and the vermilion brush in his hand fell to the ground. I casually picked it up and handed it to him. After a moment's thought, remembering Jinshu's instructions, I added my other hand and presented it to him with both hands, but he didn't take it. He was trembling all over, shaking violently. So even an emperor can cry, but he cried without a sound. Only the soft patter of tears falling onto the paper could be heard. You look so much like your mother. Listen to him talk if I don't look the part. Jinshu would really carve up my face. I stared blankly as he cried, watching his reddened eyes and trembling lashes. I found myself feeling a pang of sorrow too. I wonder if Jinshu is cold or hungry. At this thought, I began to cry as well. Eunuch Wang sighed and clapped his hands beside me, saying, "Your Majesty, this truly shows the bond between father and daughter, as you shed tears. Her Highness the Princess is also deeply distressed." The Emperor looked at me, first smiling, then suddenly growing angry again. That treacherous servant Jinshu abducted the royal heir and mistreated my child, raising her so thin. It's fortunate she died conveniently, or I would have had her flayed alive. I shivered, thinking to myself that Jinshu's death was truly well timed. In the short time it took for an incense stick to burn, I saw the Emperor cry, laugh, and rage, much like the lead actor on a stage, skillfully performing a face-changing act. Since I had entered the imperial palace, I had to pay my respects to the powers that be. After paying respects to the most revered emperor, I still had to pay respects to the second most revered, the Empress Dowager. On the way to Yongshou Palace, Eunuch Wang led me past a stretch of ruins, overgrown with weeds, broken walls, and crumbling ruins. "Your Highness, ahead is the place where the late Empress passed away. It has long been deserted, so please stand here for a moment." I obediently knelt down and kowtowed. Using the black mud from the roadside, I built a makeshift incense altar and stuck in a few foxtail grasses to serve as incense. Eunuch Wang could only smile helplessly, handing me a handkerchief to wipe my hands. The sun was high in the sky when we arrived at Yongshou Palace. Perhaps the Empress Dowager was in a bad mood, as she refused to see me but also wouldn't let me leave, then make me kneel before the hall. The palace still loves making people kneel. Jinshu's knees were ruined from kneeling in the palace, aching every day once winter arrived. Thinking of Jinshu, I straightened my back again. I hadn't forgotten why I had entered the palace. I knelt for a long time, so long that the sun nearly withered me. I heard hurried footsteps behind me. The emperor had arrived. He didn't tell me to rise, just glanced at me before rushing into the hall. Soon, the sound of an argument drifted out. "Mother, what are you doing? This child has just returned to the palace, and you are already punishing her like this. The bloodline is in question. My son, you must not be careless. Mother, just look at that face. It is Peiyu's child. It may not be the Wang family's bloodline either." There was a moment of silence. Then the emperor's hoarse voice rang out, "Where are the Wang family members, from the old to the young? They were all slaughtered by the Marquis of Chenzhen, checked one by one against their portraits." At this, the room fell completely silent. After a long while, Eunuch Wang came to help me up. Only then did I stagger to meet my nominal grandmother, a gaunt and harsh old woman, even with her hair adorned with pearls and clad in splendid attire, could not conceal the scent of decay that clung to her. Beside her stood two beautiful consorts, one with a cold gaze, the other with a feigned smile. Nyanien pays respects to the emperor, the Empress Dowager, the noble consort Shu, and the consort Shun. "Nyanien, your name is Nyanien." The emperor's voice trembled. I bowed again and replied, "Your Majesty." Jinshu said this was the name my mother chose before her passing, "to remember your grace." The emperor wept again, crying so openly in front of the three women that their faces turned pale. Then the emperor bestowed upon me the title of Princess Huayu, with a fief of 1,000 households. The faces of those three women turned even greener. To be honest, they really aren't very smart. As the saying goes, a newly built outhouse smells good for 3 days, not to mention my freshly baked daughter. The emperor's act as a loving father isn't over yet. The more they suppress him, the more enthusiastic he becomes. Now it's perfect. I have a title, a palace, and gold, silver, and treasures. If Jinshu knew that making up a name could bring so many things, she would definitely praise me for being clever. After the emperor left, the Empress Dowager took her anger out on me and had the matron take me away for a body search. From the inside out, even every strand of hair was inspected. Finally, they even submerged me in water, nearly drowning me. Water rushed into my nostrils and ear canals. the feeling of suffocation making my chest feel as if it were about to burst. My consciousness began to blur. I faintly heard the cold-eyed woman say, "The wretch we didn't eliminate back then needs to be eradicated completely, aunt. You must not be soft-hearted, shunning. It's not difficult to have a princess die in the harem, but we must not act when the emperor is paying attention. Let's wait and see. Damn it, they've learned from their mistakes. It's fine. Though, I've waited 15 years, and I have plenty of patience. Let's wait and see." I woke up in the fake smiling concubine's palace. She said my palace hasn't been renovated yet, so I'll stay with her for now. I know her. Jinshu said she's the most two-faced, always using her clever tongue to charm the emperor into a daze. Sure enough, she came to charm me. Poor dear. Have you paid your respects to your late empress mother since entering the palace? No, I haven't. Indeed, I haven't. I was just playing with mud in front of Eunuch Wang, and he even wiped my hands clean for me. Ah, back then, your mother was trapped in the fire and burned to ashes. It was truly tragic, however. Your father the emperor was also deeply grieved and observed a month-long fast in her memory. Oh, I guess seeing charred corpses makes it hard to eat meat. Jinshu once showed me a person who had been burned to death, their limbs twisted and curled up, blackened. If the emperor were like me, eating only a single grain of rice per meal, he'd probably eat anything. Seeing that I didn't respond, Zhenfei said again, "Is life among the common folk tough? Have you ever resented your father for not finding you sooner? It's not bitter. Missing my father is more bitter. Other children have parents, but I don't. I'm often bullied. I often dream of having a father come to see me. Today, seeing His Majesty, I realized that the person in my dreams was him." Concubine Jin's face turned green again. She thinks I didn't notice the shadow outside the door, but even if I hadn't, I could smell the scent of dragon's ambergris. A wrong smell as a child could mean 10 strokes of the cane. Sure enough, the next moment, the emperor rushed in, his eyes glistening, and he patted my head, saying, "You've suffered, my Nyanien. Father, what was bitter before isn't bitter now. Your daughter has endured and now reaps the sweetness." We, father and daughter, embraced and wept together. After this bout of crying, my fief was doubled. I hit the jackpot. Clearly, Zhenfei was not very happy, and the next day she had me moved back to my own palace, a dilapidated, abandoned palace. But that's okay. After Eunuch Wang came once, he sent over 8 palace maids and 8 eunuchs, and they quickly tidied up. Along with them came an old wet nurse. Avoiding the others, the old wet nurse solemnly kowtowed to me. I also knelt down and kowtowed to her, thanking her for protecting my siblings all these years in the palace. A year after Empress Wang entered the palace, she gave birth to a son, the emperor's eldest prince. Back then, the emperor had even conferred the title of crown prince upon General Wang to deceive him into returning to the capital from Liangzhu. Unfortunately, the Wang family was later exterminated, and the crown prince became a fool, now residing in the cold palace. Nanny Qin, how many people are left in the palace? Mema Qin proudly lifted her chin. There are still 10 left. Over the years, the palace has been purged many times. Some have died, some have been cast aside, but none have betrayed their master. Rest assured, young mistress, for no reason, I felt a sudden urge to cry. I hugged Mema Qin's plump figure. Thinking of Jinshu once again, they endure day after day in this deep palace, uncertain of what tomorrow may bring, while Jinshu waits in hardship outside the palace walls, for their sake. I cannot let them down. Well, I've decided, today's meal will be doubled. Although a slender and delicate woman can evoke pity, if I had fists as big as sandbags, the effect would likely be the same. Anyway, Jinshu isn't here. I gazed at the palace with its red walls and green tiles, feeling somewhat lost. Jinshu always said my heart was so big you could race horses in it, often worrying whether I could survive after entering the palace. Now I have entered the palace and survived. Yet she is the one who has died. The unpredictability of life truly makes it hard to swallow. After hastily settling in, I couldn't wait to go to the cold palace to see the eldest prince. When I arrived, he was being beaten. The man wielding the whip wore a brocade robe and a jade crown, his face resembling that cold-eyed consort Shu. "I'll beat you to death, you filthy fool. Since your bastard sister dared to anger my mother, I'll take it out on you." The whip lashed out so swiftly it seemed to shatter the wind. It fell rustling onto the person on the ground, and in the blink of an eye, bloody whip marks appeared one after another. That person screamed desperately, trying to dodge, rolling on the ground until he became like a mud figure, with sand embedded in his wounds, yet he kept rolling. This fool, what's the use of just rolling around? Get up and run. I held my breath, my eyes burning so hot they felt almost on the verge of melting. This is a prince with the blood of the Wang family, a noble and precious crown prince who should sit high on the platform, untouched by wind and snow, not rolling around in the mud like this. Bastard, keep hiding. You and your bastard sister will end up just like your dead mother, burned to a crisp. The sound of the whip and the heart-wrenching screams pierced my heart like needles. My hands trembled, digging desperately into the brick crevices, my mouth filled with the taste of rust. I wanted to rush inside, but I couldn't, Jinshu said. A little impatience could ruin great plans. I have my own things to do. I hid among the flowers, waiting until the voices inside quieted down before scrambling out. The man was already battered beyond recognition, but fortunately, he was still groaning. I rushed over to help him up, but he was so covered in wounds that I couldn't find a place to hold him. I wiped the mud and dust from his face with my sleeve, revealing a face that bore an 80% resemblance to mine. As soon as I grinned, my tears fell first. When Jinshu died, I didn't have time to cry. Now, I combined the two occasions into one and cried my heart out. I cried, but the person on the ground was laughing. He reached out and grabbed my sleeve, whispering softly, "Don't cry, it doesn't hurt." How could it not hurt? When Jinshu struck my palm just 3 times, I was in so much pain I couldn't even hold a bowl. His flesh is torn open. How many palm strikes would that equal? I let my hair fall loose, smeared dirt on my face, and, under the horrified gaze of Eunuch Wang, knelt at the entrance of the imperial study. I paid no mind to the many pairs of astonished eyes passing by, stubbornly waiting only for the summons from inside the room. Fortunately, the Emperor's theatrical urge hadn't passed, and he soon summoned me inside. With tears in my eyes, I knelt down. "Father, your daughter wishes to return home. This palace is too terrifying. I cannot endure even a single day here. You are my princess, and this imperial palace is your home. Why do you say such things? Your daughter heard that I have a brother from the same mother. Today, I went to pay my respects, only to find that my brother had been severely beaten and is now in a life-threatening condition. I am terrified. Are there wicked people in this palace? Will I also be beaten?" The Emperor's pale face flushed red as he personally rose to help me up. I obediently stood up, trembling like a quail. The imperial carriage soon arrived at the cold palace, where my poor brother still lay in the mud. His face, bearing an 80% resemblance to mine, struck the Emperor's eyes with glaring clarity. The Emperor likely hadn't seen this son of his in a long time. Had he seen him, he shouldn't have been so moved by my appearance. I, along with Eunuch Wang, helped my brother to his feet. He shrank back, looking fearfully at the Emperor. As soon as the Emperor raised his hand, my brother covered his head and cried out in alarm, "Don't hit me, little brother, don't hit me." The Emperor's face darkened like the bottom of a pot as he sternly declared, "Is there no law in this palace? A prince of the realm being whipped, and you eunuchs are just for show. When the Son of Heaven is angered, corpses lie in the millions. However, my cheap father's anger is just that, anger and nothing more. That consort Shu is the niece of the Empress Dowager, her father is the Marquis of Chengyan, and her brother is the Prime Minister. Even if her son had beaten a foolish prince to death, let alone just hitting one, it would likely be treated as a minor offense with a light punishment. But it doesn't matter. I will avenge my brother myself. I just want the emperor to know that he still has an eldest prince, who is now nearly of age, and that is enough. The emperor could not give my brother justice, but he could give him a new palace, attendants, and even summoned the imperial physician. Moreover, his residence was placed in the palace closest to mine. After my brother was treated for his injuries and changed his clothes, he became a handsome young man, though he was terribly thin. His gaze at me was as bright as if a fire were burning within. "You're the younger sister, the one I've only seen in mother's womb." I shook my head with a smile. "No, I am not the younger sister. In fact, it was I who had seen him as a tiny infant, watching him grow from a chubby toddler into a young crown prince. I hid in the back courtyard like a rat in the gutter, secretly observing his glory. Now, times have changed. The rat has transformed into a princess of noble birth. While the once beloved young crown prince has become a fool, my heart felt as if it had been soaked in a vat of vinegar, finally understanding what Jin Shu meant by a complex mix of emotions, 1,000 words, yet only one managed to escape. "Brother, take care of your health, we still have many things to do. There is still a long way to go." But clearly, the women in the harem did not wish for my brother's well-being. The Empress Dowager summoned her brother to the Yongshou Palace under the pretext of inquiring about his injuries. I've never seen anyone visit a patient by making the patient run around themselves. But it doesn't matter, they can do as they please, I have my own plans. The desolate palace path was completely empty. I kicked apart the incense burner I had molded back then and bent down to pick up something. Footsteps followed behind me, neither hurried nor slow. So I slipped into the abandoned cold palace to lie in wait. Soon, the rabbit arrived. The second prince was vicious enough, but not particularly clever. He had brought only 2 attendants with him. He cornered me inside the cold palace. "It was you, this wretched girl, who went to Father Emperor to tattle. Today, let these 2 brothers serve you well, so you can become a wanton ghost on your way to the afterlife." The second prince gave a sinister smile and gestured with his fingers. The attendant advanced toward me. They were both robust and burly. Even one of them could easily crush me, let alone 2. I swiftly dodged, but in my panic, I lost my way and crashed right in front of the second prince. The second prince grabbed my neck and sneered, "Don't worry, your foolish brother will soon join you." I smiled slightly. "Then I thank you. Here's a gift in return." With a twist of my body, I quickly broke free from his grasp and slipped something into his robe. Then swiftly darted to hide behind the heavy palace gate 10 steps away. The second prince had no time to react. Boom! A sudden thunderous explosion erupted from the ground, sending sand and stones flying and thick smoke billowing. Moments later, I covered my ringing ears and peeked out from behind the gate. There were no survivors left in the courtyard. Literally, the thunderbolt bombs of the Liangju army only killed 3 people, which was truly a waste. By the time I avoided the blooded and mangled corpses and made my way back to the palace along the small path, Nanny Chin had already prepared the water. I washed away the smell of gunpowder from my body and carefully wiped off the thick osmanthus-scented hair oil. The clamor surged into the palace just as I had finished dressing impeccably, without a single flaw. The stern-faced matron beside the Empress Dowager scrutinized me before signaling to take me away. I was then bound and brought to Yongshou Palace like a quail. As I was forced to kneel on the ground, I saw my brother kneeling in the corner nearby. The Empress Dowager's punishments lack creativity, always resorting to kneeling. I quietly moved a bit closer to my brother, exchanging a subtle glance with him. My brother gave a silly smile and mumbled, "Sister, This noisy and chaotic scene finally welcomed the entrance of the main character as noon approached. The face of the noble consort Shu was as pale as a ghost, disheveled and stumbling. She rushed forward with a pair of scissors in hand. I met her movement head-on, and the scissors struck squarely in the center of my chest. When the Empress Dowager was helped out, she was on the verge of fainting. Meanwhile, the noble consort Shu giggled foolishly, muttering to herself, "My child, your mother has come to avenge you, killing these two lowly creatures to accompany you in death." My brother held me tightly, his tears falling in large drops onto my face. He could no longer pretend to be foolish and instead cried out hoarsely, "Summon the imperial physician, quickly, save my sister." I secretly pinched him, but his body remained tense and unresponsive. What a fool. Soon, the imperial physician arrived, and the emperor came as well. The emperor's face was deathly pale, supported by eunuch Wang. The pain of losing his son had thrown him into disarray. Noble consort Shu smiled. The Empress Dowager wept. I was still moaning in agony, while my brother kept repeating "Sister, sister," like a clucking chicken. The entire palace of eternal longevity was in chaos, like a pot of boiling porridge. "Enough," the emperor shouted, and the hall suddenly fell silent. "Imperial physician, how is Princess Huayu?" I quickly released the scissors I was holding in my hand, and they fell to the ground with a clatter. "Your Majesty." The longevity lock worn by Princess Huayu blocked the blow. "It is slightly damaged, but she is otherwise unharmed." Only then did my brother release his tightly clenched hand. I nestled close to him, trembling as I said, "Father, what is going on? It's so terrifying." The emperor had no intention of continuing to play the role of a loving father. He merely glanced at me indifferently. Without uttering a word, my heart tightened, and I fell silent. Moments later, the commander of the Imperial Guard strode into the hall and reported, "Your Majesty, the second prince and the others were killed by thunderclap bombs." The scene carried the smell of sulfur and saltpeter, and iron shells of thunderclap bombs were also discovered. The emperor slowly sat down, as if petrified. When he looked at me again, his gaze held a trace of warmth. "Nyanien, you and your brother should step back for now. Both of you are injured." However, consort Shu refused to relent. She threw herself to the ground, stubbornly raising her chin. "Your Majesty, even if it was a thunderbolt bomb, so what? Ever since this girl entered the palace, my son has died tragically. How can she be unrelated to this?" On the day Nyanien entered the palace, Her Majesty the Empress Dowager thoroughly searched her, not even sparing a single strand of her hair. "Tell me, where would a girl who has just come of age get a thunderbolt bomb?" "But the thunderbolt bombs belong to the Liangzhu army." "But the Liangzhu army no longer bears the Wang surname." The emperor's eyes turned red as he confronted consort Shu head-on. Consort Shu, as if waking from a dream, slowly collapsed to the ground and suddenly let out a heart-wrenching wail. What they were arguing about? Naturally, my foolish brother and I had no idea. The two of us, weak and helpless, knelt to the side, trembling with fear. The emperor walked over, helped us up, patted my brother's thin shoulders, and then gently stroked my hair. "You two siblings seem to get along quite well." The elder brother struggled to perform a bow to the emperor. "Father, since mother passed away, I have been lost in confusion for many years. Only today, seeing my sister on the brink of life and death, did I feel as if waking from a dream. It is my unfilialness." The emperor's astonished gaze swept back and forth between us. With a tearful voice, I said, "Father, please let me take my brother home. I promise I can take good care of him. I am afraid of the beatings and killings in the palace." The emperor sighed with melancholy. "Nyanien, you've just returned and already wish to leave your father. Don't speak such foolish words. Go back and rest." After saying this, he bestowed a pile of tonics and rewards. Feeling content, I walked away arm in arm with my brother. Leave the palace? I will never leave in this lifetime. It was so hard to infiltrate this place. How could I leave before avenging myself? Not long after, it was rumored that Lady Shu had gone to Lady Zhen's palace to smash and destroy, seemingly injuring Lady Zhen's face. After causing a huge commotion, Lady Shu went to the Protecting the Nation temple to pray for the soul of the second prince. Lady Zhen fell ill and refused to see anyone. The emperor was at his wits' end, eventually only reprimanding concubine Shu for her grief over the loss of her child, and the matter was left unresolved. Concubine Zhen's father was the Grand Marshal Qin, who held command over the entire military. The 200,000 strong Liangzhu army, once led by the Wang family, was now under the control of concubine Zhen's brother, Qin Zhong. With this in mind, the thunder bomb that had blown second prince to pieces suddenly had its origins explained. No matter how much the Qin family protested their innocence, the blame was firmly placed on them. After all, the concubine Zhen also had a son, only a month younger than the second prince. The harem was in chaos, and the court was rife with strife. The second prince, whom the Chengyan Marquis estate had high hopes for, was ruined by the Qin family, and they would not let it go. Mutual accusations and exposing each other's flaws. It's as lively as a theater. But these matters have little to do with my brother and me, apart from frequently currying favor with the emperor to make my presence known. I keep the palace gates tightly closed and live a low-profile life the rest of the time. My brother is even more so. Brother has now fully recovered his ability to read and write, making rapid progress, yet he still often feels there isn't enough time. He said with some regret, "If I hadn't wasted those years, I wouldn't have to study day and night now." I coldly shattered his illusion. "If you hadn't pretended to be insane, you wouldn't have lived long enough for me to enter the palace." Brother grumbled resentfully and went back to his studies. The emperor's birthday was soon approaching. The night before the holy birthday, just before the gates were to be locked, my brother hurried to my palace. He brought me a bowl of noodles. "Try it and see if it's still edible." The noodles are the most ordinary Yangchun noodles, not very visually appealing. With some thick and some thin, it's still steaming, freshly made and delivered right away. I looked at the flour on my brother's clothes and the charcoal dust on his hands, feeling a pang of tenderness in my heart. My brother sheepishly rubbed his hands together and pulled out a peachwood carved hairpin from his clothes. "Your birthday is a taboo in the palace, and I was worried no one would hold a coming-of-age ceremony for you. They say the emperor's birthday is the most auspicious time in the world, so I borrowed the timing of the sacred longevity festival to celebrate your birthday." "All right, this hairpin was carved by me. I once made one for the Empress Dowager too. In the future, when I can leave the palace, I'll find you an even prettier one." This foolish brother, does he really think I was born on the day Empress Wang set herself on fire? I didn't expose any of this, just ate the noodles with tears in my eyes. Then sternly urged him to go back and study. My brother happily went back. He endured many hardships in the palace, especially in the years following the death of Empress Wang. Later, after feigning foolishness, he managed to survive under the protection of a covert network. Though he often went hungry and lacked warm clothing, in the ruthless and treacherous palace, he still retained a pure and innocent heart. Today, he treats me as his own sister, cherishing me like a precious gem. If he were to learn the truth one day, would he feel disappointed? If Jinshu were here, she would surely scold me for overthinking again. If Jinshu were here, what would it matter to endure a scolding? On the day of the sacred longevity festival, Consort Shu returned to the palace with eminent monks from the Guardian Temple to pray for the emperor's blessing.
Is indeed a shocking tale. The consort Zhen, however, spoke softly. If the late empress's little princess had lived until today, she would indeed be of the age to be betrothed. If what the old woman said is true, the current Princess Huayu should be 20 years old, which is a difference of 5 years. It's here, finally here. I endured hunger and hardship for over a decade. swallowing endless bitter herbal medicines, and finally, the day has come when they serve their purpose. I suppressed the urge to smile and lamented in a sorrowful voice. 20 years old. Does Nyanien look 20? The emperor also expressed deep doubt. Nyanien certainly doesn't look 20. Summon the imperial physician. The physician can examine the bones. When the imperial physician arrived, he examined my hand and leg bones. The princess is indeed at the age of 15. And her bones have not fully developed yet. If she were a woman of 20, her bones would already be mostly set. I forced back my tears and whispered, "Father, if you no longer want me, I can leave the palace. Everyone says I am very much like my mother and also like my brother. If I am not your daughter, then whose child am I? Could there really be such similar people in this world?" Brother heard the news and rushed over, disregarding all obstacles to kneel beside me. "Father, no matter what mistake my sister has made, it is my fault as a brother for not disciplining her properly. Please forgive her." With two faces so strikingly similar placed side by side, anyone would have to admit that my brother and I are indeed blood related. The emperor seemed to believe it as well. Just as I was about to relax, a voice suddenly said, "Your Majesty, while Nyanien is indeed the sister of the first prince, whether she is a princess is another matter entirely." Concubine Jeanne was confident and waved her hand, summoning someone to bring in an old man lying on a couch. This man was once in the supply camp of the Liangju army. The late Empress Wang Peiyu also led the way in transporting grain and fodder from the supply camp when the Ruren attacked. This old wounded soldier told me a small story. Back then, during the intense war, the front line was short of supplies. The eldest daughter of the Wang family was tasked with transporting a batch of grain and grass to the front line. On the way, they encountered a raid by a Uyghur noble. After the Wang lady announced her identity, instead of retreating, the enemy surrounded the supply convoy tightly, expressing admiration for General Wang's reputation and demanding that the eldest daughter accompany the Uyghur noble for a night before they would let them pass, considering the greater good. The eldest daughter of the Wang family willingly offered herself, and subsequently, the supplies were successfully delivered to the front line. It was the winter of the first year of Yonghe. By that time, if she had conceived secretly, by the time the late empress entered the palace, the child would have been only 3 months old. Doesn't this align perfectly with what that old woman said? The gentle voice of the concubine Jeanne was like a poisoned rope, tightly coiling around my neck. Making it hard for me to breathe, I lightly bit my tongue, pretending to be calm as I raised my head. The emperor's expression was a mix of anger and uncertainty, his gaze sharp as if piercing me, making me unable to meet his eyes. My brother stepped in front of me, his voice filled with anger as he shouted, "Your Highness, the concubine Jeanne, you cannot insult my late mother, who is no longer here to defend herself, by spreading such falsehoods about her, Your Majesty." These are the words of the surviving veterans from back then. "I dare not deceive you, father. The Huehu people are of the Simu race, with blue or green eyes and yellow hair. Look at Nyanien. Does she resemble any of them in the slightest?" The precious consort sneered. "The eldest prince still lacks experience. Many of those born from marriages between the Huegu people and us Han look more like Han than Huegu." The hall was silent. Only the heavy breathing of the emperor could be heard. His eyes flickered slightly, and he remained silent. I took a deep breath and met his cold gaze head-on. "Your Majesty, relying solely on the testimony of a single soldier to tarnish my background is also an insult to my mother's reputation. Although I may have limited knowledge, I understand that one person's word is biased, 2 people's is public, and 3 testimonies are conclusive. I request Your Majesty to summon more witnesses, if Your Majesty permits. I am also willing to undergo a blood matching test. My mother was upright and honorable, and so am I." Concubine Jeanne seemed to be waiting for me, immediately saying, "My elder brother, General Qin, has been stationed in Liangju for over 20 years. He can be summoned for questioning." "Very well," the emperor said gravely. "Summon Qin Zhong." An hour later, Qin Zhong entered the hall. He wore an ordinary robe, his hair streaked with grey, although he was the same age as the emperor. He appeared much older. Qin Zhong knelt before the hall, his gaze fixed straight ahead, his back ramrod straight. "Qin Zhong, Do you know about the incident in the winter of the second year of Yonghe when Wang Peiyu and the supply camp were besieged by the Uyghurs? Qin Zhong's figure slightly hunched as he replied in a low voice. I am aware. At that time, I was recovering from serious injuries in the supply camp, so... Was it true that Wang Peiyu offered herself to the Huihu nobles to secure their release? Qin Zhong remained silent for a long time before saying, It is true. On Zhenfei's face, which was already animated with excitement, she forced a look of sorrow. Your Majesty, look, General Qin has testified to this. Before the words had finished, Qin Zhong interrupted, saying, The incident is true. The front line is in imminent danger, and the lives of so many soldiers are at stake. General Wang indeed intended to sacrifice himself to the wolves to secure the passage of supplies. It was only when I accompanied General Wang to the Huihu camp that we discovered the Huihu noble was the 9th princess of the Huihu king. She admired General Wang's courage and righteousness and not only did not humiliate us but also helped our supply camp pass through Huihu territory, allowing us to reach the front line ahead of schedule, which led to the great victory at Chiozi Pass. Although General Wang was a woman, she was both wise and brave, with unwavering loyalty. It is truly unjust for her to be slandered posthumously. Looking at Qin Zhong's bent back and the tears glistening in the Emperor's eyes, my anxious heart slowly calmed down. This round, I have won again. After the incident, the Emperor granted a large bounty and personally rewrote the memorial for Empress Wang, sending it by fast horse to be burned at the Imperial Mausoleum. My foolish brother was deeply moved and wrote several overly sentimental letters to Empress Wang. Empress Wang, disturbed in her peace in the afterlife, would probably be cursing again. I reaffirmed that this foolish brother could no longer stay in the palace and had to be sent away. According to Jin Shu's previous instructions, Liang Ju should be about ready by now, so, taking advantage of Qin Zhong's visit to the palace to report on his duties, I intercepted him in a corner. Zhao, Princess Huaiyu. Qin Zhong nearly slipped and called out my real name. I shot him a glare. Does the promise you made to me still hold? Qin Zhong replied solemnly. Of course it does. I know that Qin Zhong is a man of his word. Sure enough, on the very next day, I heard that he proposed in the morning court that the Liangju army needed to be rewarded, and requested the emperor to appoint an envoy for the task, according to past practice. The envoy for rewarding the troops was usually either a close confidant of the emperor or a prince. Now, the emperor only has the eldest prince and the third prince left. According to the closeness of relationships, the task that should have fallen to the third prince was, for some reason, assigned by the emperor to the first prince. Providing comfort to the troops is a good assignment, as it allows one to engage with military affairs and cultivate one's own loyal followers. This unexpected stroke of luck left my brother utterly bewildered. Little sister, could this be a trap? It's not a trap, but rather the emperor's own guilty conscience. The Liangju army was founded by the Wang family, who have lived in Liangju for generations and have deep-rooted connections with the Liangju army. 15 years ago, the emperor used the Marquis of Chang'an's blade to wipe out the Wang family entirely, even though Qin Zhong now commands the Liangju army. The emperor wouldn't dare send the third prince there recklessly. What if something happened to him there? But you're different. You have the blood of the Wang family. For you, going there is truly like returning home. And so, in the warm spring of March, I sent off my tearful brother. With him in Liangju, I could rest easy. As for me, an eye for an eye is my creed. With my brother gone, I had nothing left to hold me back. I chose a dark and windy night to sneak into Consort Shu's palace and set a fire. The fire was not fierce and was quickly extinguished by the palace attendants, but Consort Shu was greatly frightened and fell seriously ill. Having set fire to the cunning palace herself in the past, she was haunted by guilt and suspected that Empress Wang was seeking revenge, so I started fires every now and then, and Consort Shu soon fell gravely ill, lingering on the brink of death. Meanwhile, the third prince, whom Consort Zhen held dear to her heart, was bitten by a snake that had somehow slithered into his bedchamber. He remained bedridden for many days, ended up with a lame leg, and thus lost any chance of ascending the throne. As for who did it, it certainly has nothing to do with me. a little princess with no roots or backing. My brother was thriving in Liangju. Whenever the emperor wanted to summon him back to the capital, there would always be some unrest at the border. Either the Uyghurs would invade, or the Rouran would cause trouble. This back and forth dragged on for 3 years. At this time in the court, the Chengyan Marquis mansion and the Qin family had been vying against each other for many years, each suffering losses. The upright officials from humble backgrounds, however, emerged as a dark horse, breaking through the barriers of powerful families and becoming another force in the court. I am not sure who is behind these people, but I happened to overhear the young palace maids chatting, saying that the new top scholar came from Liangju, that harsh, barren, and vast Liangju could actually produce a top scholar. When I heard the name of the top scholar, I smiled. Ban Gui, this brat from the second branch. Why did he choose a turtle for his fake name? After laughing, I couldn't help but feel tears welling up in my eyes. The Wang family has been away from the world for too long. It's time for them to return. 3 years later, my brother returned to the capital and was reinstated as the crown prince. Imperial consort Shu did not survive that winter and passed away from illness. Not long after, the Empress Dowager followed her in death. The emperor aged significantly overnight. He often summoned my brother to play chess with him, but my brother was busy with affairs and had limited free time. Only I, with my idle time, often went to see him on the day of his sacred birthday. I visited him privately and presented him with a congratulatory gift. After seeing it, he spat out a mouthful of blood and was left paralyzed in bed, unable to speak. Leaning close to his ear, I carefully recounted the plans I had made over the years. After the Liangju army had arduously driven away the Rouran, the entire land of Liangju was left with 9 out of 10 households empty, its population dwindling. The Wang family, born and raised in Liangju for generations, had long become an inseparable part of this land. However, the new emperor was wary. Along with the military rewards came an imperial edict, summoning Wang Peiyu, the only daughter of the Wang family, to enter the palace as empress. This was the emperor's test. The Wang family could refuse. But what would follow? Demotion, exile, or the destruction of their family? The desolate Liangju could no longer withstand another war, while the Uyghurs, Rouran, and Tibetans on the border were still watching with covetous eyes. Wang Peiyu stepped forward once again, setting aside her 3-month-old daughter, and declared, "I will marry." However, a temporary concession could not appease the young emperor. Liangju, which knew only the Wang family and not the Son of Heaven, was a grave concern in the emperor's heart. The loyalty of the army and the hearts of the people can only belong to the emperor. Even if the Wang family were willing to let go of everything, the emperor would not believe that they had truly relinquished their power. Thus, the emperor appointed the crown prince, conferred honors upon the old General Wang, and issued an edict summoning the entire Wang family to the capital to receive their titles. When the emperor suspects you of rebellion, it is best to rebel immediately, otherwise, you will face utter ruin. The Wang family's fate was no different. General Wang faced death with composure. The ruler commands the subject to die, and the subject must obey. He would never become a traitor to the state. The people had just found peace, and how could he, for the sake of his own 100 family members, drag millions into turmoil? Empress Wang deeply understood her father's character, so before the Wang family returned to the capital, she secretly ordered each branch of the family to select heirs to be taken away by the family's sworn warriors, to live incognito within the Liangju army, preserving the Wang family's legacy. In the palace, she had also planted numerous hidden agents to protect her only son. After all this was done, Empress Wang announced that she was 3 months pregnant and secretly met with me. She asked me, did I want to protect my younger brother or live under an assumed name elsewhere? I said, I want to protect my younger brother. The emperor struggled to lift his head, his cloudy eyes glaring at me, his mouth opening and closing as if trying to speak. You want to ask me if I'm really your daughter? I smiled maliciously. Of course not. Empress Wang's pregnancy was a complete hoax from the start, just a contingency plan for the future. The emperor let out a guttural ho-ho sound, then slumped to the side, unconscious. I certainly wouldn't tell him that back then. Empress Wang and Qin Zhong ventured deep into the enemy camp of the Uyghurs, taking hostage the Uyghur king's daughter. Qin Zhong was drugged with a potent sedative, and Empress Wang used her own body to counteract the poison, conceiving me a child born of sin. That's why Qin Zhong never married for his entire life, and why he indulged me in everything I desired. It was all because he harbored guilt, sacrificing his wife for the sake of Qin family's prosperity, ashamed of Wang Peiyu's rescue, ashamed of the Wang family's cultivation, even more ashamed of being this very daughter. I closed the palace door, watching my brother walk towards me quickly. He was no longer the frail boy of the past, but had grown tall and steady, mature and capable. I smiled and walked towards him, towards a brilliant sunshine. Oh, no, I mean mother. I finally have the right to call you mother. Is this prosperous age what you wished for? After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comment section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.